This is the defendant lobby, all right? But there's no defendant. I've been trying to reach Lana all morning. Where could she be? And where's Ema, for that matter? This feels wrong. Like
Something's been happening behind the scenes.
Edgeworth!
Knowing you, you've already figured it out. Who the owner of the 777-7777 ID number is.
Well, I have a pretty strong hunch. Looks like I'm not the only one who's figured it out.
You know, the only reason this trial didn't reach a verdict yesterday is because there was still room for doubt on this ID record. If that number does belong to whom you suspect, then no doubt will remain. After all, he hasn't been officially charged with anything.
True. Not yet.
In any event, once all doubt has been removed from that list, I can call for a ruling on the defendant. 5 minutes after the trial starts, Lana will be found guilty.
But she didn't do it.
I figured you'd say as much. That's why I came here, to hear what you have to say.
This is the first time he's ever done something like this. Lana's hiding something, and the only way we'll ever know the truth is to draw it out of her.
The truth.
Everything goes back to the SL9 incident.
Don't be stupid. Today's the last day of the trial. We don't have time to reminisce about the past.
That depends on you. If she's found guilty, you'll lose your only chance to find out what really happened.
I'll think about it. See you in court, Wright.
This is it. If I'm ever going to find out what Chief Gant has on Lana, it's now or never.
The court is now in session for the trial of Miss Lana Skye.
The defense is ready, Your Honor.
The prosecution is ready, Your Honor.
Normally, this is when the prosecution puts forth its opening statement. But before that, the police chief has a proposal to make.
Chief Gant!
Morning, folks. How's everyone doing? Hey, Adji, you been back to the pool yet?
No, I've been drowning enough as it is in my work.
That's a good one. Don't think I can top that.
If you don't mind me asking, Chief, what exactly is this proposal of yours?
Lana, that is to say, the defendant, has asked me if she could speak directly to the court.
She wants to do what?
Having heard what she intends to say, I feel she should be granted her request. In the end, it should save everyone a lot of time and trouble.
What's this all about, defendant?
I'd just like to make one simple request and then I'll be finished.
Well then, what's your request?
Your Honor, I'd like you to put an immediate end to this trial.
Huh?
I confess to all charges against me. On February 21st of this year, I murdered Detective Bruce Goodman in the underground parking lot of the prosecutor's office.
No, Lana! Objection! You can't! Your Honor, the defendant's claim does not change the defense's plea.
In that case, Mr. Wright, I no longer require your services.
But Lana!
Your Honor, I hereby forfeit my right to an attorney. The prosecution may lack direct evidence against me, but it has sufficiently proven its case through testimony and circumstantial evidence. I would like you to render your verdict now, if you please.
Well, the defendant certainly has the right to self-representation. Her request is legally valid, although this is an unprecedented situation. Indeed, it appears there's no need to continue this trial, even if Mr. Wright may feel otherwise.
This can't be happening!
It appears the time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant, Lana Skye.
Objection! One moment, Your Honor.
Mr. Edgeworth?
The prosecution has not yet proven the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Any ruling at this stage would certainly be premature.
Come now, Worthy. I understand this is a difficult time for you, but why don't you just be a good little boy and keep your mouth shut,
I don't think I care for your tone, Chief Gant.
What?
Creating another fabrication to cover up your past mistakes. Sorry, but I'm no longer the naive little boy you would have me be. With this sudden confession from the defendant, it's obvious to me some kind of deal was struck behind the scenes.
Some kind of deal, Not everyone operates as you do, Worthy.
I thought so. Your Honor, the prosecution would like to change its first witness.
Oh, to whom?
As its first witness, the prosecution would like to call Miss Ema Skye. I request the court hears her testimony.
Hold it! Mr. Edgeworth, I'm exercising my right to self-representation. I don't think we need to continue this travesty
I don't care what you think, Miss Skye. The exposure of truth sometimes results in tragedy. However, no matter how tragic the truth may be, it would be an even greater tragedy to avert one's eyes from it.
Very well. The court shall grant the prosecution's request. That's okay with you, right, Chief Gant?
Worthy, you'll live to regret this. Mark my words.
Miss Ema Skye, please take the stand.
Looks like Edgeworth has decided to take the horse by the reins.
Now then, witness, please state your name and occupation.
My name is Ema Skye. My occupation? I'm Lana's little sister, and I want to be a scientific investigator.
2 years ago, you encountered the serial killer Joe Dark of the Joe Dark killings. Is this correct?
Yes. I'm trying my hardest to forget about that, though.
I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to recall those events one more time.
Mr. Edgeworth, please remember that this trial concerns the murder of Detective Goodman. Is an incident that was resolved 2 years ago really all that relevant?
Yes, it most certainly is.
Well, okay then.
Sure gave in fast.
Now please testify what happened to you 2 years ago.
The trip to yesteryear has finally begun. It's bound to lead to the truth behind this trial.
I was waiting in my sister's office that day. A man came running in and took me hostage. Neil Marshall rescued me, but I'll never forget what I saw that instant. The man raised up his knife and stabbed Mr. Marshall in the chest.
It's a good thing that you weren't harmed.
I passed out. I don't remember much.
That's understandable. However, please tell me, Mr. Edgeworth, what does this testimony have to do with Detective Goodman's murder?
That will soon become apparent, Your Honor.
You've got to admire him for his courage, considering he has no evidence.
Very well. The defense may begin its cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Two years ago, the defendant was a detective at the police department, correct?
Yes, she was second in command under Chief Detective Gant. My sister? She was the best detective ever.
Yes, I remember. Chief Detective Gant and Miss Skye used to be quite the pair.
I believe they shared the same office.
That's right. I'd always sit at my sister's desk and dream about playing that organ. Lana promised to take me to dinner that day, after she finished her work.
What can you tell us about the man that came in and took you hostage?
His name was Joe Dark. He was, a serial killer.
Joe Dark was brought in on that day for questioning. We were desperate to get anything on him that would lead to an arrest.
And when he saw his chance, he fled the room, right?
Upon fleeing the room, Dark proceeded to take the elevator. He must have been in a panic because he appears to have taken the elevator up instead of down. And from there, he ran into Skye and Gant's office.
There was a lot of noise coming from outside, so I opened up the door to have a look. That's when I saw him.
And from there, Prosecutor Marshall would soon arrive. Mr. Edgeworth, what was the prosecutor doing there?
That day, there were two people present during Dark's questioning. Detective Damon Gant and Prosecutor Neil Marshall.
So Gant was there too?
Neil Marshall had just received the King of Prosecutors Award. Young and dedicated, he went straight to the questioning room after the ceremony.
I assume that would also be why he was the first to run after Dark.
When Dark grabbed me, I thought I was as good as dead.
But Prosecutor Marshall came running in and saved you. Can you tell us more about that?
Mr. Marshall jumped on Dark, and just then, the lights went out.
The lights?
It was just about this time of year. There was a terrible storm going on, and lightning struck nearby.
So the electricity went out.
Wait a minute. If it was pitch dark in that room, you shouldn't have been able to see anything, right?
Right, but just then lightning flashed again outside. That sudden flash left an unforgettable image of the scene in my mind.
I see.
I told the detective about what I saw then.
The detective?
Yes, Detective Goodman. He was in charge of the case.
So you spoke with Detective Goodman about this 2 years ago?
Yes. That's what's so scary about this trial.
And you told Detective Goodman about what you saw?
Yes, but at the time, the words just wouldn't come out. That's why I drew a picture.
A picture? Yeah, I think she mentioned that before.
Well, Mr. Wright, have you heard enough?
The picture the witness drew. I believe it has a very important meaning.
But the list of evidence I was given 2 years ago didn't contain a picture.
But I did draw it. I swear. I'm not just imagining it.
Perhaps the witness is mistaken.
Objection! Mr. Edgeworth, this little girl put all her heart into drawing that picture. And yet you still insist on denying its existence?
Huh? Hey! I'm not the bad guy. All I'm saying is that as the prosecutor for that case, I wasn't handed such a picture.
That may well be, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
This is the evidence list for the SL9 incident.
Please turn it over, Your Honor.
Turn it over? Turn it... What is this?
Yes. What is that?
Hey, that's it! That's the picture I drew.
Indeed, two men appear to be wrestling here.
Objection! What's the meaning of this? What are you doing with that list?
Me?
Only the prosecutor in charge should have access to this list.
Wait, these lists, they're different from each other.
What?
It would appear, Mr. Edgeworth, that the evidence list you were handed 2 years ago was incomplete. These two lists fit together to form one. You can see the marks here, where they were torn apart from each other.
So you see, Mr. Edgeworth, it's quite obvious what happened. 2 years ago, only half of the evidence in that case ever reached you.
What? What?
Order! Who'd have thought the picture would have been drawn on the back of the list?
I handed that to Detective Goodman in the questioning room.
Wait a minute. If this list was torn in half, then that means... Your Honor!
Are you all right, Mr. Wright? Your eyes are bulging from your head.
If the evidence list was torn in half, then there might be more of the drawing on the back of Mr. Edgeworth's list.
Yes, that's quite conceivable. Mr. Edgeworth?
It's possible. Let's see.
Is something wrong?
Even have to ask?
Sorry, Your Honor. There's something drawn on the back of my list. This is... that thing.
That thing? That thing that was dancing in the evidence room?
Apparently, the head of criminal affairs used this for his blueprint.
Maybe he was out of scrap paper.
Very well, witness. Will you please testify about this picture you drew 2 years ago?
Huh? Oh, yes, sir, Your Honor.
What's wrong with Emma? She seemed to be thinking about something when she saw the picture.
This is the picture I drew 2 years ago. The flash of lightning was so bright, all I could see were shadows. After that, I must have fainted. But this picture shows exactly what I saw in that instant.
To think a flash of lightning could burn such an image into your mind.
Thanks to that, though, she was able to show us exactly what she saw.
Well, I don't see any contradictions here. This clearly shows Joe Dark about to murder Prosecutor Neil Marshall.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Your Honor, but this picture the witness drew actually does contain a blatant contradiction.
What? But I still remember it like it was yesterday.
Mr. Wright, perhaps it would be faster if you simply pointed out this contradiction for us.
The contradiction, of course, lies here. Take a look at the knife the man is holding. If you look closely, you can see its tip is broken.
In fact, you don't even have to look closely to see that.
But Mr. Wright, look at the evidence. See the murder weapon? Its tip is broken too.
If I recall, the tip of the knife was found broken off in the victim's body.
It was the conclusive piece of evidence that proved Joe Dark was the murderer.
I'm afraid it's not so simple, Emma.
Objection! Perhaps the knife was broken beforehand.
Objection! Sorry, but I'm afraid that's not possible. The tip of the knife was found inside the victim's body. If it was broken beforehand, it couldn't possibly wind up there.
That's right, but what does this mean?
Objection! The tip of the knife was undeniably discovered within the victim's body. The only possible explanation is that the witness's memory is mistaken.
Objection! That's why I asked her so many times if she was sure she remembered correctly. I believe you were annoyed at the time, but she was sure she remembered correctly.
Objection! But there's no other way to explain this inconsistency.
Objection! Not so fast, Mr. Edgeworth. There is another explanation. Have you forgotten already? About a little something called falsified evidence?
You're treading on thin ice, Wright.
All I'm saying is that this broken knife might be a piece of evidence that was forged. You can't deny the possibility.
No!
Order! Are you saying the investigation really was corrupted?
Yes, Your Honor. Please allow me to once again go over the evidence that took place the day of the murder. The police department and the prosecutor's office were holding a ceremony that day. After receiving the King of Prosecutors Award, at the ceremony, Neil Marshall questioned Joe Dark, along with Damon Gant. During his questioning, Joe Dark fled the room. Prosecutor Marshall chased after him and was killed by Dark. It is my belief that somewhere in this story, there is a lie.
I'm not lying. The man really was holding up a broken knife.
If that's true, then there's no other way around it. This knife could not have been the actual murder weapon, which means there must have been another broken knife.
What are the chances of there being 2 broken knives?
If the witness is this adamant about the accuracy of what she saw, it can't just be explained away by a simple observational error.
Mr. Wright.
In that instant, Emma really did see a broken knife. It's right here inside this picture. This window 2 years into the past.
This is a picture of the award ceremony when prosecutor...
What is it, Mr. Edgeworth?
It's the broken murder weapon.
Notice the award Prosecutor Marshall is holding.
That's a broken knife!
As we earlier concluded, the knife in the picture was not Joe Dark's knife. That being the case, the knife the witness saw was in all likelihood from this award!
Order!
Neil Marshall was awarded King of Prosecutors that day. As an award, he was given this broken shield and a broken knife. When he chased after Joe Dark, he pulled out this knife since, being a prosecutor, he did not carry a pistol. This broken knife was the only weapon he had in this dangerous situation.
Objection! But that can't be!
Oh? And why not, Mr. Edgeworth?
Because if the King of Prosecutors' award knife was the murder weapon, then the murderer and the victim would be reversed. The man raising a knife would have been Prosecutor Neil Marshall.
But the prosecutor was the one who actually died.
That's true. What's going on here?
It seems Mr. Wright has been a bit too eager to jump to conclusions.
Hold it! Wait! I remember now! I remember everything!
Witness?
Mr. Edgeworth?
What is it?
Could you show me your evidence list again, please?
His list? The one with that picture scribbled on the back?
I knew it. This picture? I'm the one who drew it.
What?
That's right. The list wasn't torn in half at the time I drew this picture. All this time, I've been trying so hard to forget. I must have locked this part away deep inside me.
Perhaps it would be best if we added this to the witness's testimony. Would you please tell us what you've recalled, Miss Skye?
Yes, Your Honor.
First the knife mix-up and now the blue badger? This should be interesting.
When I saw that man raise his knife, I panicked and rushed toward both of them. I think I knocked away the man with the knife. Just then, there was another flash of lightning. And that's when I saw the blue badger. He wasn't in the room, but I'm sure I saw his shadow.
This is certainly most unusual.
Try impossible. The head detective of criminal affairs didn't even design him until this year.
That would mean he didn't even exist 2 years ago. So Emma must have seen something else.
Yes, well, the defense may now begin its cross-examination.
Hold it! Stop, please! Don't pursue this any further!
Lana?
What's the meaning of this? Please remain seated in the defendant's chair.
But you can't do this! I've already confessed to the crime. Why can't you just leave it at that?
Chief Prosecutor Skye. We've already come this far. It's too late to turn back.
Silence! The defense will now begin its cross-examination. Bailiff, please detain the defendant.
It seems we're finally getting close to the core of the matter. Emma didn't see the blue badger. Instead, she must have seen... Wait, that's it! Your Honor, we've made a serious error about what it is we're actually seeing in this picture. The defense asserts that the mysterious blue badger was in fact... this!
But that's, what exactly is that?
I believe it's some sort of decorative jar.
But Mr. Wright, that doesn't look anything like the blue badger.
Indeed, it doesn't. As it stands now, it's just a plain jar. However, if we were to change the angle at which we view it... Well, is this a miracle or what? No one can possibly deny this jar's resemblance to the blue badger.
No, it can't be.
Order! The defense has proven its claim. The mysterious blue badger witnessed on the day of the crime was actually this odd...
Objection! Although we all enjoyed Mr. Wright's dramatic performance, one question remains. What's your point?
What do you mean?
So that badger thing was actually just a jar. That doesn't change anything.
Objection! I'm afraid that's where you're wrong, Mr. Edgeworth. You see, this changes everything.
Indeed. Very well then. Please tell us what's different now that we know the witness saw this jar.
Allow me to take these in turn. At the moment of the murder, the witness saw this jar.
Not only that, but she saw it at a very specific angle.
Knowing this, where could she have seen this jar?
Where?
The location of the jar is shown in the picture taken on the day of the crime. It's on the shelf in the office of Damon Gant.
Objection! But the body was found lying near Lana Skye's desk. The witness testified so herself.
Objection! Yes, but it is these two facts that reveal what actually transpired. You see, the struggle between Dark and Marshall did not take place in Lana Skye's side of the office. It happened on the other side of the room in Chief Gant's office.
Objection! Are you implying the murderer moved the victim's body from Damon Gant's office to Lana Skye's office?
Yes.
Why would he do that? There's no reason.
Exactly. If there wasn't a reason, he wouldn't have gone through the trouble. The only logical conclusion is that there was a reason.
Do you know what that reason was, Mr. Wright?
I finally figured it out. So this is why Lana tried to stop the trial. It's too late to quit now, though. Please, recall the witness's testimony. She said she knocked away the man who was holding up the knife. In the next instant, the jar was hit and flew through the air. Now tell me, what could have sent the jar flying?
That would have to have been the impact the man made when he was knocked into the wall.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I may draw your attention to this picture once more. If the man was knocked in the direction of the shelf the jar was sitting on, what would he have hit?
The suit of armor holding a very sharp and dangerous-looking sword.
Yes, and since the man who was knocked into the armor was carrying a broken knife, he would have had to have been Neil Marshall, wielding the prosecutor's award.
No. Mr. Wright, you can't be thinking...
Yes, there is another possibility of what actually transpired in that room.
Another possibility?
I don't know if I can go through with this.
Mr. Wright, or what's the matter?
If events took place as the defense theorizes, then the outcome is obvious. Assuming the man Ema Skye knocked away was actually Prosecutor Neil Marshall.
You mean Mr. Marshall died because of me? No!
I never imagined her testimony would lead to this.
So it was the witness who took the victim's life, and then proved so with her own testimony. This is unprecedented.
Objection! What are you saying?
I'm sorry, Miss Skye, but given the circumstances surrounding that case...
So Dark murdered Prosecutor Marshall! How can you think it was Emma? How dare you try to pin this crime on her?
Imagine that coming from you. If you recall, it was you who admitted to forging evidence 2 years ago. The reason you moved Prosecutor Marshall's body was to keep anyone else from finding out about what Emma did, wasn't it?
I assure you, Mr. Edgeworth, I have no idea what you're talking about. If you hope to have anyone believe your insane allegations, I'm afraid you're going to have proof. Tell me, do you have any conclusive evidence that proves my sister killed Neil Marshall? I'm willing to bet you don't.
Yes, it certainly would be difficult to prove this with evidence.
If we don't have evidence, then we'll have to rely on testimony.
I'm afraid that won't work in this case. Both parties involved in the incident are dead.
We certainly can't get dead people to testify. This has all been a wild goose chase from the beginning.
Touché, Miss Skye. Of course, this means that we're left with only one possibility.
What do you mean, Mr. Edgeworth?
I mean the possibility that the victim left us a message. For better or for worse, Mr. Marshall did not die instantly. He may have left behind the name of the person who took his life. Somehow.
That's impossible.
Well, Mr. Wright, this is the only possibility left to you. A message from the deceased. Does such a message exist?
No. There's no way a dead person could tell the murderer's name.
Well, it looks like this is as far as we can go with this.
Mr. Wright, you disappoint me. I never thought you the type to let your feelings cloud your judgment.
My feelings?
If we overlooked the victim's message, one he would have written with literally his last breath, then everything would be lost in darkness.
Perhaps that thing really is the clue I'm looking for. This is it. I can't afford any mistakes. Come to think of it, Your Honor, there may actually be evidence that contains a message from the deceased. And it is already in our possession.
Mr. Wright, will you stop at nothing to prove my sister a murderer?
Do not be mistaken, Miss Skye.
Huh?
Our purpose is not to accuse Emma of any crime. There is only one thing we seek: the truth. No matter how painful it may be.
Now then, Mr. Wright, what is this evidence that conveys a message from the deceased?
That thing is the message left by the deceased.
This is that blue badger from before, right?
Oh, is he just going to speak the killer's name?
If that thing could, I'm sure it would.
Looks like everyone's forgotten this is just a jar. A message was left here, on the surface of this jar.
What do you mean?
If you look closely, you can see a faint trail of blood on this jar.
Looks like someone wiped the blood away.
Yes, but notice, for some reason, the blood on some of the fragments was not wiped away.
Yes, there is a line here. Drawn in blood.
So what you're saying is these dots were once lines?
Prosecutor Marshall did not die instantly. He used the few precious moments left to it to leave behind a message.
One that someone apparently wiped away. But blood must have seeped into the jar where the lines changed direction.
Precisely so. All we need to do is connect these points. The victim's message will become apparent.
No!
Mr. Wright, what kind of message did the victim leave for us?
I've just got to connect these dots to make letters. There's only one thing the victim would have written, given the circumstances. The murderer's name. It's a defense attorney's duty to prove his client's innocence. That's why all I've been thinking about is saving Lana. After all my efforts, I never thought it would turn out like this. Emma. It says, Emma, Your Honor.
So this is the final message Prosecutor Marshall left behind.
Of all people, she may not have meant it, but in the end, the one who took the victim's life
Was Ema Skye.
Seaworthy. Can't say I didn't warn you. Do you understand the implications of what you've done?
What? What are you talking about?
2 years ago, Joe Dark was sentenced to death. He was convicted because of his final murder. I believe you were a prosecutor on that case, were you not? Yes, Worthy. Because of you an innocent man was sentenced to death. Not only that, but you used forged evidence to ensure his conviction.
Objection! But Joe Dark really was a serial murderer. That's undeniable.
I'm afraid that's not important. Didn't you know? We aren't defenders of justice, we're merely keepers of the law. Sentencing a man to death is no light matter. Even if there wasn't any cover-up or evidence forgery, ultimately, the responsibility falls on the prosecutor in charge. Despite what anyone may say, this fact cannot be denied.
What's going on at the prosecutor's office?
They might have sent an innocent man to his death!
How can he just stand there like it wasn't his fault?
Order, 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 order! Order, 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 order! Order, 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 order!
The gavel's pounding fell on deaf ears. Unable to settle the crowd, the judge declared a recess. Where this trial is headed, no one knows.